The woods don't forget. They wait, silent and patient, for those who dare to trespass. I was 14, maybe 15, standing on the edge of a world that felt too small and too vast all at once. The trailer park we called home was a forgotten speck in mid-Michigan, a patchwork of rusted dreams and cracked asphalt, caught between endless farmlands and woods that seemed to pulse with secrets. Not the deep, untamed forests of the north, nor the neon-lit cities of the south, but a liminal place where the ordinary bled into something darker. That autumn afternoon, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, a sour note lingering like a warning. I didn't know then that stepping into those woods with Matt would tear open a wound in my reality, one that still bleeds in my dreams. That our trailer park was a graveyard of ambition, empty lots strewn with weeds, trailers sagging under the weight of time, and ditches that carved the land like open veins. One ditch, shallow and choked with reeds, stretched 50 yards to the park's first entrance. Another, deeper and wider, snaked toward a pond at the back, its surface a glassy lie that reflected the sky without revealing its depths. Beyond the pond, a strip of woods stretched toward the road, a 200-yard trail flanked by cottonwood trees, their gnarled branches clawing at the clouds. My brother used to spin tales about that place when I was younger, his voice low and serious, as he spoke of shadows that moved without bodies, of a human skull he swore he'd unearthed in the dirt. Just stories, I told myself, laughing to drown out the unease. But his words about a shadow figure, tied to the ancient native land beneath our feet, clung to me like damp cloth. "Cursed," he'd said, his eyes distant. "You'll feel it if you linger." I felt it that day, though I didn't want to admit it. The sky was a swollen bruise, gray and heavy, the wind rattling the trailers like a warning. Matt and I were restless, the kind of restless that comes with being young in a place with nothing to offer but imagination and trouble. We'd spent years playing army games, turning sticks into rifles, our battles sprawling across the abandoned lots. A good stick was a treasure too thin, and it snapped. Too thick, and it slowed you down. We guarded them like relics, hiding them in secret spots to keep them safe. That afternoon, the wind was fierce, tearing at the trees, but the ground was maddeningly bare, no branches worth claiming. "We need new guns," Matt declared, his voice sharp with a stubborn determination that made him impossible to argue with. I glanced toward the woods, my stomach twisting. The trail was a place we avoided, its shadows too deep, its silence too heavy. But Matt was already moving, his sneakers crunching on the gravel, and I followed, my heart thudding with a warning. I couldn't name. The moment we crossed into the woods, the world changed. The wind, so loud moments ago, dulled to a low moan, as if the trees were swallowing it whole. The cottonwoods loomed taller than I remembered, their bare branches swaying like skeletal fingers beckoning us deeper. The trail was narrow, carpeted, with brittle leaves that shifted underfoot, each step echoing in the stillness. I tried to focus on the task, scanning the ground for sticks, but my eyes kept darting to the shadows, half expecting something to lunge. Matt, oblivious, rummaged through the underbrush, picking up twisted, gnarled branches and tossing them aside. "Too bumpy," he muttered. "Too big." I stayed back, my hands shoved in my pockets, unwilling to touch the ground. Ticks, centipedes, spiders. The woods were alive with things that crawled, and I wasn't about to invite them onto my skin. But it wasn't the bugs that made my skin crawl. It was the air. It felt wrong, like a weight pressing against my chest, whispering you don't belong here. I glanced back toward the park, its faded trailers barely visible through the trees. "We should go," I wanted to say, but the words stuck in my throat. Matt was too focused, too stubborn, and I didn't want to look weak. So I stayed, my breath shallow, my eyes scanning the trail. The cottonwoods groaned above us, their branches scraping together in a rhythm that felt alive, deliberate. I told myself it was just the wind, just the clouds blotting out the sun, but the darkness felt personal, like it was watching. I thought of my brother's stories, the ones I'd laughed off, but never quite forgotten. He'd spoken of nights when the woods seemed to breathe, when the air grew heavy and the shadows moved. "There's something old here," he'd said once, his voice barely a whisper. "Something that doesn't like us." I'd rolled my eyes, but now, standing on that trail, I felt it a presence, ancient and unyielding, stirring in the silence. The memory sent a shiver down my spine, and I shook it off, focusing on Matt's rummaging. He was muttering to himself, oblivious to the weight in the air, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that every step we took was an intrusion. Halfway down the trail, we reached a pile of sticks Matt deemed worthy. He crouched, sorting through them, with the intensity of a soldier inspecting weapons. I stood nearby, shifting my weight, the urge to run growing stronger. To the right, through a gap in the trees, I could see the island, a patch of land cut off by the ditch, overgrown with shrubs and sharp, needle-like branches. It was a place we never ventured, its tangled undergrowth too forbidding, its silence too complete. I stared at it, my stomach twisting, and that's when I noticed it. The world had gone quiet. The birds, the squirrels, the faint hum of life that always filled the woods, it was gone. The silence was a void, swallowing everything, and in its place, a new sensation crept in, a prickle at the back of my neck, a certainty that something was watching. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The air felt thicker now, like I was breathing through a wet cloth. I scanned the trees, the shadows, the island, but saw nothing. "It's just your imagination," I told myself, but the lie felt hollow. Matt was still digging through the sticks, oblivious, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. And then I heard leaves rustling to my right, soft at first, then louder, deliberate. My head snapped toward the island, my heart slamming against my ribs. Something's there, I thought, my body rigid, my eyes straining to pierce the shadows. The rustling grew closer, faster, and then I saw it. Oh God, I saw it. A figure, hunched and wrong, moved through the shrubs as if they weren't there. It wasn't a person, not really, but it wore the shape of one, a solid shadow, black as ink, with arms too long, hands dangling at its wrists like dead weights. Its back was curved, unnatural, and its legs moved in a jerky, tiptoe motion, like a predator stalking prey. It was fast, impossibly fast, weaving through the trees with a grace that made my blood run cold. Its presence screamed one thing: get out. This is mine. I stared, my mind screaming to run, but my body locked in place, as if the figure's gaze, though I couldn't see its face, had pinned me to the ground. The shrubs parted around it, untouched, as if they feared it too. Run. The thought hit me like a gunshot, and I grabbed Matt's shoulder, my voice a strangled yell. "Run, Matt! Now!" He looked up, confused, his eyes wide with questions, but my panic was contagious. I bolted, my feet pounding the trail, branches snapping under me. Matt shouted something behind me, but I couldn't hear him over the roar of my own pulse. The woods seemed to close in, the trees leaning closer, their shadows stretching like claws. I didn't dare look back, but I felt it, something chasing, something watching, its presence a weight on my back. The trail stretched endlessly, each step a battle against the syrupy air, my lungs burning, my vision blurring. I stumbled, catching myself on a tree, the bark rough against my palms, and kept running, driven by a primal fear I couldn't name. Finally, I burst into the open, collapsing against a massive oak at the edge of the park. My chest heaved, my legs trembling, the world spinning around me. Matt stumbled out seconds later, gasping, his face pale. What the hell was that? He demanded, his voice shaking. I tried to explain, my words tripping over each other, the shadow, the hunch, the way it moved. He hadn't seen it, not clearly, but he'd heard it, felt it, a presence that moved fast but slow, like it was toying with us. We sat there, catching our breath, the park's familiar decay, suddenly a sanctuary. The woods loomed behind us, silent now, but I knew it was still there, waiting. It's cursed, I whispered, echoing my brother's words. Matt nodded, his eyes wide. Something's in there, and it doesn't want us. The rest of that day passed in a blur. We didn't talk about it, not really, but the silence between us was heavy, charged with unspoken fear. I went home, locking the door behind me, my eyes darting to the windows as the sun sank below the horizon. That night, I lay awake, the wind howling outside, each gust sounding like footsteps, each creak of the trailer a warning. I dreamed of the woods, of cottonwoods whispering my name, their branches curling like fingers. In the dream, the shadow stood at the edge of the trail, its hollow gaze pulling me closer, its voice a hiss. You came back. I woke up sweating, my heart racing. The memory of its tiptoe steps burned into my mind. Years later, the trailer park is still there, but I've never gone back to the woods. Not once. The stories my brother told, the ones I laughed off, feel too real now, too heavy. Sometimes, when the wind howls through the park, I swear I hear it a soft rustle, a tiptoe step, a reminder that some things don't forget. I've tried to move on, to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, a moment of panic. But the dreams don't stop. They pull me back to that trail, to the silence, to the shadow that knew my name. If you ever find yourself at the edge of those woods, don't listen to the silence. Run. Some silences are louder than screams. I stood alone in the empty parking lot of my old high school, the night air thick with the scent of asphalt and distant pine. The stars above were dim, smothered by a haze that seemed to press down on me, heavy as a secret I couldn't name. My breath caught in my throat as I heard it, a faint, hollow laugh, like a child's voice trapped in the folds of a dream. It wasn't coming from the school's darkened windows or the woods beyond the fence. It was inside me, curling around my heart, whispering memories I'd buried long ago. Was I awake, or had the nightmares followed me here? My hands trembled, keys jangling in my pocket, as I realized this wasn't the first time I'd felt this dread. I've never been one to trust calm. Growing up, anxiety was my constant companion, a shadow that clung to me tighter than my own. Skid. My mother once told me a story from when I was 2, how a doctor watched me sit in her office, small and rigid, my eyes darting like I was waiting for the world to unravel. He's got anxiety, the doctor said, her voice soft but certain, as if she could see the storm brewing inside me. That storm never left. It hummed in my chest through childhood, made my hands shake during tests, my stomach twist at crowded rooms. I fought it the only way I knew, how by staying busy, filling my mind with anything to drown out the noise. You can't outrun fear, but you can bury it. Or so I thought. I'm not the type to lean on crutches. Drugs were never an option. I'd seen too many lives unravel under their weight. Alcohol? A few hard ciders on the worst days, their crisp bite of fleeting comfort, but never more than that. I couldn't stand the thought of losing control, of letting the world slip through my fingers. Instead, I found refuge in stories dark, eerie tales from darkness prevails that filled my drives to work, my lunch breaks, my restless nights. I'd listen to accounts of shadow figures and haunted woods, my earbuds a shield against the thoughts that clawed at me. The stories were thrilling, a safe kind of fear until they stopped being fiction, until they started feeling like memories, not mine. Life wasn't always this heavy. There were moments of light summers cutting grass with my grandfather, his calloused hands guiding mine on the mower, his laughter warm as the sun. He ran a small landscaping business, and I'd tag along, the scent of fresh clippings and gasoline, grounding me. Those days, I felt normal, like the weight in my chest might lift. But even then, the unease lingered, a whisper I couldn't shake. I'm Christian, and faith has been my anchor, a steady hand when the world felt like it was slipping. I'd pray for peace, for strength, but some nights, the darkness felt closer than any answer. I've carried other burdens too. An eating disorder shadowed my youth, a cruel voice that made every bite a battle. My mother noticed it early, the way I pushed food around my plate, my eyes distant. She took me to doctors, their words a blur of diagnoses and advice, but I fought through it. No pills, no shortcuts, just sheer will to reclaim my body, my mind. I'm proud of that victory, but it left scars, a lingering fear that I'm never quite whole. Healing isn't a destination. It's a journey through shadows. And those shadows grew darker when we moved to the Pine Woods. The double wide on 5 acres was supposed to be a fresh start. I was younger then, still in high school, still believing I could outrun my fears. The land was beautiful, a sprawl of towering pines that swayed in the wind, their needles carpeting the earth. 10 minutes from town, it felt like a world apart. A place where time slowed, where the air was thick with the scent of resin and possibility. I'd wander the property, my sneakers sinking into the soft earth, imagining I was an explorer in some untouched realm. But even in those moments, I felt it a prickle on my neck, a sense that the pines were watching, their whispers not as friendly as I'd hoped not. My mother felt it too. She'd pause in the kitchen, her hands frozen over a cutting board, her eyes scanning the room as if someone had just spoken her name. "Did you hear that?" she'd ask, her voice barely above a whisper. I'd shake my head, but I'd heard it too, a faint rustle, a creak of floorboards when no one was there. The house never felt empty. At night, we left our bedroom doors open, an unspoken rule. Closing them felt like inviting something to linger, to press closer in the dark. You don't lock doors against ghosts. You give them room to breathe. I didn't. Know then that the pine woods would mark me, that their shadows would follow me to the school, to the life I'm living now. I didn't know about the woman who died there, her presence woven into the walls, her laugh waiting to find me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That laugh, that hollow sound, it started somewhere else, in a place I thought I'd left behind. Some stories don't end when you move away. They wait, patient as the dark, until you're ready to hear them again. Her knife froze mid-air, hovering above the cutting board, as if the world had held its breath. My mother stood in the kitchen of our double wide, her eyes wide, scanning the dim corners where the afternoon light barely reached. The scent of onions and pine sap hung heavy, mingling with something colder, unnameable. I was sprawled on the living room couch, a comic book open on my lap, but her sudden stillness pulled me upright. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice a thread, barely holding together. I shook my head, but my skin prickled, a warning I couldn't ignore. Something was here, watching us. The pine woods outside our windows swayed, their needles whispering secrets, and I wondered if the house we loved was hiding a truth we weren't ready to face. We'd moved to the double wide 5 years ago, when I was still in middle school, chasing a quieter life. The 5-acre plot was a dream, pine trees stretching skyward, their trunks rough and ancient, guarding us from the world beyond. 10 minutes from town, it was close enough for errands, but far enough to feel like we'd stepped into a storybook. I'd loved it instantly. The air was sharp with resin, the ground soft with fallen needles, and the silence was a balm after the noise of our old apartment. This is home, I'd thought, running through the woods, my sneakers kicking up earth, imagining I was a pioneer, carving a path through the wild. But even then, in those first golden months, there was a shadow beneath the joy, a whisper I couldn't quite hear. The house itself was modest, a long, low structure with faded siding and a tin roof that sang. Under the rain. Inside, it was warm, cluttered with our lives, my mother's cookbook stacked on the counter, my father's fishing rods leaning by the door, my comics scattered across the coffee table. The living room opened to the kitchen, a single space, where we'd gather for meals, laughter filling the air as my mother stirred pots of chili, her apron dusted with flour. Those moments were my anchor, a reminder that love could hold a family together, even when the world felt unsteady. But the house had its own rhythm, a pulse we couldn't control. At night, the floorboards would settle, their groans too human, too deliberate. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the house was speaking, or if something else was listening. My mother was the first to notice it. She'd always been sensitive, her intuition sharper than mine. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, the lamplight casting soft glows across our plates, she paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. "It's like someone's walking behind me," she said, her voice low, as if afraid to be overheard. My father chuckled, his eyes crinkling, but I saw the flicker of unease in his gaze. "Just the house settling, honey," he said, but his hand tightened around his glass. I wanted to believe him, to cling to the safety of his words, but I'd felt it too, a presence, a weight that pressed against my back when I walked through the hall alone. "You're never alone here," the house seemed to say, its walls closing in, its shadows stretching longer than they should. The pine woods were part of it. They surrounded us, a green sea that swallowed sound, leaving only the rustle of needles and the occasional cry of a distant owl. I'd spend hours exploring, my flashlight bobbing in the dusk, chasing the thrill of discovery. The trees were ancient, their bark etched with patterns that looked like faces if you stared too long. I'd find small treasures, smooth stones, bird feathers, a rusted nail half buried in the earth, and tuck them into my pockets, proof of my adventures. But there were moments when the woods changed, when the air grew thick and the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the sky. I'd stopped, my heart thudding, certain I wasn't alone. Turn around, my mind would urge, but I never did. Afraid of what I'd see. One night, my mother told me a story that made the unease real. We were in the kitchen, washing dishes, the steam from the sink curling around us like fog. She was quiet, her hands moving slowly, as if weighing our words. "When I was a girl," she began, "my grandmother warned me about places like this. Houses built on old land, where the earth remembers too much. She said they hold on to things, people, moments, pain. You feel them, even if you don't see them." Her voice trembled, and she glanced at the window where the pines stood silent, their silhouettes black against the moon. "This house, it's not empty, sweetheart. I hear footsteps at night, soft, like someone pacing, waiting." I swallowed, the sponge slipping from my hand. She's right, I thought, the memory of those groans, those shadows, flooding back. Footsteps became our secret. We didn't talk about them with my father, who preferred logic over whispers. But my mother and I shared glances, a silent understanding that the house was more than wood and nails. We left our bedroom doors open at night, an unspoken ritual. Closing them felt like trapping ourselves with whatever walked the halls. I'd lie awake, listening, the darkness pressing against my chest. Sometimes I'd hear it, a soft tread, deliberate, passing my door, fading into the living room. I'd pull the blanket tighter, my breath shallow, praying it wouldn't stop. "Don't look, don't move," Don't breathe. The house seemed to hold its breath with me, waiting for dawn to break the spell. The pine woods called to me, even as they unnerved me. I'd stand at the edge of the property, the trees looming, their scent sharp and alive. I wanted to love them, to reclaim the joy of those first days. But the shadows were deeper now, the silence heavier. I'd think of my mother's story, her grandmother's warning, and wonder what the earth remembered. Was it a person? A moment? A tragedy? The house and the woods were one, their secrets intertwined, and I was caught in their web. Some places don't let you go. As I stood there, the wind would rise, carrying a faint sound, a laugh, hollow and distant, like a child lost in the dark. I'd turn back to the house, my heart racing, knowing I'd hear it again. The laugh came from nowhere, a hollow echo that clawed at my spine. I stood frozen in the high school's east wing hallway, the mop handle slick in my palms, the fluorescent lights buzzing like dying insects. The air was thick with the sting of bleach and something older, mustier, as if the walls had exhaled a secret they'd held for decades. The laugh wasn't loud, but it was everywhere, bouncing off lockers, seeping through the tiled floor, curling into my ears like a whisper meant only for me. You're not alone. My flashlight beam trembled, slicing through the shadows, but the corridor was empty, its silence heavier than the darkness. I'd worked here for months, but tonight the school felt alive, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. I'd never planned to be a custodian. After graduating from this same school, I'd done odd jobs fixing desks for teachers, tuning guitars for the music instructor during talent shows. When the custodial position opened, I jumped at it. $1,600 a month, no resume needed. What's not to love? The job was simple. Mop the nurse's office, check bathrooms, haul breakfast trash, keep the hallways gleaming. My manager, a lanky guy who'd been here when I was a student, made it easy. He'd lean back in his chair, his boots propped on a desk, and say, "Just get your 8 hours, kid." He didn't care if I took my siblings home at 3:15 or stretched my lunch break, as long as the work was done. I liked the routine, the way it grounded me, kept my anxiety at bay. But the late afternoons, when I returned alone to finish my tasks, were when the school showed its true face not by day. The building was familiar, alive with the chaos of students' laughter, sneakers squeaking, lockers slamming. The hallways smelled of sweat and cheap perfume, the classrooms humming with chatter. I'd push my cart through the crowds, nodding at teachers who still called me by my first name, their smiles warm with memory. It felt like home, a place where I belonged. But after 4 p.m., when the last bell rang and the parking lot emptied, the school changed. The lights dimmed, their hum growing jagged, and the air turned stale, heavy with the weight of absence. The hallways stretched longer, their corners sharper, as if the building had rearranged itself in the quiet. This isn't the school, you know. I'd think, my footsteps echoing too loudly, my shadow trailing like a stranger dot. It started with small things. A sharp tap from the ceiling tiles, precise, like someone testing the wood with a knuckle. I'd pause my mop dripping and stare upward, expecting to see a raccoon's glint or hear the scurry of rats. But the tiles were still, their edges yellowed with age, and the sound never came twice. I'd shake it off, blaming the old building, its pipes and beams settling in the evening chill. Then came the pen's blue BICs rolling across empty desks. In locked classrooms, their plastic clattering against the silence. I'd check the rooms, my keys jangling, but find only neat rows of chairs, the chalkboards blank, the air undisturbed. Just the wind, I'd tell myself, but the windows were sealed, the vents silent, the bathrooms were worse. One night I was scrubbing sinks, the lemon scent of cleaner burning my nose, when the toilets flushed one, then another, a cascade of water that roared through the pipes. My heart lurched, and I spun around, the sponge slipping from my hand. The stalls were empty, their doors ajar, the mirrors reflecting only my wide eyes. These weren't the censor toilets. Those were in the West Wing, and even those needed a warm body to trigger. I stepped back, the tiles cold through my boots, and waited, my breath shallow. Nothing, just the drip of a faucet, slow and deliberate, like a countdown. Something's here, I thought, my skin crawling, but I grabbed my cart and left, the door swinging shut behind me. The sounds grew bolder. Giggles, soft and fleeting, echoed down the halls, like children playing hide-and-seek just out of sight. I'd follow them, my flashlight beam darting, but the corridors were empty, their lockers gleaming dully under the lights. Tennis shoes screeched on tile, a sharp, skidding sound, as if a kid had bolted around a corner. I'd run, my boots pounding, only to find nothing, no footprints, no open doors, just the hum of the fluorescents and the weight of my own breathing. Classrooms would come alive, lights flickering on, computers humming, printers whirring, book pages rustling in the stillness. I'd step inside, my hand on the doorframe, expecting to find a teacher working late, but the rooms were empty, their air thick with the scent of chalk and decay. The moment I crossed the threshold, the sound stopped, the silence slamming down. Like a curtain, the staff had a name for it, SC. She was the school's founder, her initials carved into the cornerstone, her portrait hanging in the main office, a stern woman with gray hair and piercing eyes. When a light flickered or a door creaked, someone would laugh and say, "SK's at it again." It was a joke, a way to shrug off the unexplainable, but I saw the unease in their eyes, the way they'd glance over their shoulders. One night, over coffee in the break room, a coworker named Tom told me the story. "She built this place in the 50s, he said, his voice low, his mug steaming. Poured her heart into it, but they say she never left. Died in her office, right there by the window. Some folks hear her walking the halls, checking on her school." He chuckled, but his fingers tapped the table, restless. "Is she watching?" "Yous now?" I wondered, the coffee bitter on my tongue. I tried to laugh it off, to bury the fear under routine. I'd mop, scrub, haul trash, my earbuds blasting Darkness Prevails episodes to drown out the silence. But the stories I loved, tales of shadow figures and haunted woods, felt too close now, their edges blurring into my reality. I'd check the parking lots, hoping to find a colleague's car, but the asphalt was always empty, the streetlights casting cold pools of light. The air grew heavier each night, pressing against my chest, and I'd catch myself holding my breath, listening for the laugh, the footsteps, the whisper of a name I didn't know. You can't ignore what's real, my mind would say, and I'd grip my mop tighter, my knuckles white. One night, I was locking up, the alarm set to arm at 10 p.m. The hallway was dark, save for the red glow of the exit sign. The laugh came again, closer, sharp enough to cut through the hum of the lights. I spun around, my flashlight beam slashing the shadows, but the corridor was empty. The air shifted, carrying the scent of pine and something rancid like wet earth. Left too long in the dark. My boots squeaked on the tile, and I backed toward the door, my heart hammering. The laugh followed, soft but relentless, weaving through the lockers, the walls, the air. She's here, I thought, and I ran. The night, swallowing my footsteps, the school's gaze heavy on my back. Storm's growl tore through the night, a primal warning that stopped my heart. I stood at the edge of the pine woods, the beam of my cheap flashlight trembling across the gnarled trunks, their shadows twisting like fingers reaching for me. The air was sharp with the scent of sap and damp earth, but beneath it lingered something sour, like meat left too long in the dark. Storm, our pit bull, pressed against my leg, her muscles taut, her eyes fixed on the blackness beyond the trees. The moon hung low, its silver light barely piercing the canopy, and I felt it a presence, heavy and watchful, stirring in the silence. Something's out there. My breath caught, and I gripped the flashlight tighter, its plastic creaking under. My fingers, as the forest held its breath with me. I'd never been one for night walks. The pine woods behind our double wide were my playground by day, a maze of towering trees where I'd hunt for treasure-smooth stones, hawk feathers, bits of rusted metal half buried in the earth. But at night, the woods changed, their welcoming. Green turning cold, their paths narrowing into tunnels of shadow. I only ventured out that night because Storm needed to run, her energy pent up after a day cooped inside. She'd paced the living room, her nails ticking on the linoleum, her brown eyes pleading. "All right, girl," I'd said, grabbing my jacket and the $5 flashlight from the kitchen drawer. My mother had glanced up from her book, her brow furrowing. "Stay close," she said, her voice tight, and I nodded, ignoring the prickle on my neck. "It's just a walk," I told myself, but her words echoed as I stepped into the dark. The woods were quiet, too quiet. No crickets sang, no owls called. Only the faint rustle of pine needles under my boots and Storm's steady panting. We crossed our property line, heading toward the neighbor's land, where a pond shimmered under the stars. They'd moved away months ago, leaving the place empty, but they'd given us permission to fish and wander. I liked the solitude, the way the world seemed to pause out here, but tonight the silence was wrong, a vacuum that pressed against my ears. Storm stayed close, her ears twitching, her tail low. I shone the flashlight ahead, its beam catching the glint of a holly bush, its waxy leaves sharp and gleaming. The pines loomed taller, their branches knitting together, blotting out the sky. "Turn back," my mind whispered, but I pushed forward, drawn to the bush, its leaves beckoning like a secret. I was reaching for a leaf, its surface cool against my fingers, when Storm froze. Her growl started low, a rumble deep in her chest, then rose to a snarl, fierce and bloodthirsty. I dropped the leaf, my flashlight swinging wildly, its light swallowed by the dense foliage. "Storm, what is it?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, but she didn't move. Her gaze locked on the darkness beyond the bush. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of decay, and I felt it a shift, like the forest had turned its eyes on me. My skin crawled, and I stepped back, my boot crunching a twig. The sound was deafening, a betrayal in the stillness, and Storm's snarl grew louder, her hackles rising like a ridge of steel. Then I heard it rustling, sharp and frantic, not the scurry of a raccoon, or the shuffle of a coyote. It was heavier, deliberate, like something large circling just out of sight. My flashlight darted, catching only leaves and shadows, each one morphing into a shape that wasn't there. I parted the holly, expecting to find Storm tangled in the yard. Branches, but she wasn't there. Her growl came from behind the pines, fierce and unrelenting, and my stomach dropped. "Storm!" I called, my voice cracking, but the rustling grew louder, closer, a rhythm that matched my pounding heart. I backed away, the flashlight shaking, its beam too weak to pierce the dark. "You're not alone," the forest seemed to say, its silence. A weight I couldn't shake. My mother's voice came back to me, a memory from a quiet night in the kitchen. We'd been shelling peas, the snap of pods filling the silence. When she looked at me, her eyes distant. "My grandmother used to say the woods have memory," she'd said, her fingers pausing. "They hold on to things people who wandered too far, promises broken, blood spilled. You feel them at night, when the world's too still." She glanced at the window, where the pines stood like sentinels, their shadows pooling on the floor. "Be careful out there, sweetheart. Some Things don't like being seen. I'd laughed, brushing it off. But now, with Storm's growl echoing, her words felt like a warning I'd ignored. The rustling stopped, and for a moment, the silence was absolute, a void that swallowed sound and light. Then it came a scream, high-pitched and unearthly, like 1,000 voices fused into one. It wasn't human, wasn't animal, but something else, a wail that clawed at my sanity, raw and dissonant. The air vibrated, and I staggered, my flashlight slipping, its beam slicing the ground. The scream stretched, a chorus of agony and rage, and I saw it movement, swift and unnatural, behind the holly. A shape, too tall, too thin, darted through the pines, its limbs bending at angles that defied bone. It didn't touch the ground. Not really, but glided, the leaves parting before it like water. Run, my mind screamed, but my legs were led, my breath trapped in my chest. Storm's growl turned to a bark, sharp and desperate, and I spun toward her voice. She was there, 10 feet away, her body low, her teeth bared at the darkness. The scream faded, replaced by a faint crunch, like leaves crushed under immense weight, growing softer, further away. I ran to Storm, dropping to my knees, my hands burying in her fur. She trembled, her eyes wide, her tail tucked tight. "It's okay, girl," I whispered, but my voice shook, and I knew it wasn't true. The forest was still, the air lighter, but the scent of decay lingered, a reminder of what had been there. It let us go, I thought, my heart racing, but I didn't know why. We stumbled back to the house, my flashlight flickering, its batteries dying. The double-wide loomed ahead, its windows dark, and I burst through the door, locking it behind us. My mother was asleep, her book open on the couch, and I didn't wake her. I sat on the floor, Storm pressed against me, her warmth grounding me, but the scream echoed in my skull, a sound I couldn't unhear. What was it? I wondered, my eyes darting to the windows, where the pines stood silent, their secrets buried deep. The night stretched on, and I waited for dawn, knowing the woods were watching, their laughter a whisper in the dark. The headlights caught it mid-leap, a twisted shape that burned into my eyes. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as the creature streaked across the country road, its gaunt body stretching unnatural in the glare. The air inside that truck was stale, heavy with the scent of grease from my brother's takeout bag. But outside, the night pressed close, cold and silent. My brother, slouched in the passenger seat, jolted upright, his phone slipping to the floor. What was that? He whispered, his voice thin, but I couldn't answer. The creature was gone, swallowed by the pitch-black woods, but its image lingered, a skeletal frame, grayish fur hanging loose, a neck too long, ending in a stub where a head should have been. That wasn't a dog. My heart pounded, and I floored. The gas, the engine roaring. As the road curved deeper into the dark dot, it was past midnight, the kind of hour when the world feels abandoned. I'd driven to the Mexican restaurant where my brother worked, a small place on the edge of town that stayed open late for stragglers. His shift had dragged, the owners too polite to shoo out lingering customers, and I'd waited in the parking lot, my truck idling, the radio humming static. The town was quiet, its streets empty save for the occasional flicker of a streetlight. I'd leaned back, my eyes heavy, thinking of the Pinewoods house, its shadows waiting for us. My brother finally emerged at 1:40 a.m., his apron balled up, his face tired but relieved. "Thanks for waiting," he said, climbing in, the scent of tacos and sweat following him. I nodded, pulling onto the highway, the headlights carving a path through the night. The drive home was familiar 10 minutes through town, then 10 more along the old country road to our double wide. The highway was deserted, its asphalt gleaming. Under the moon, and I let my mind wander, the hum of the tires a steady comfort. My brother fiddled with his phone, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face, and we talked about nothing his annoying boss, the new game he wanted. But as we left the town lights behind, the night grew heavier, the air cooler, seeping through the cracked window. The road narrowed, flanked by dense woods, their branches clawing at the sky. I felt it then a prickle on my neck, a sense that the dark was watching, its gaze colder than the wind. We were halfway home, the pine woods looming closer, when my mother's voice drifted into my mind. She'd told me a story once, years ago, as we sat on the porch, the cicadas droning. "This road's old," she'd said, her eyes on the tree line. "My uncle used to drive it, back when it was just dirt. He saw things shapes crossing. Too fast, too wrong. Said they weren't animals, not really. Told me to never stop, no matter what I saw." She'd laughed, but her hand had trembled, and I'd wondered what she'd seen, but she hadn't told me. I'd brushed it off then, a kid's confidence shielding me. But now, with the woods closing in, her words felt like a warning carved in stone. "Keep driving," I told myself, my hands tightening on the wheel. The curve came suddenly, a sharp bend where the road dipped, the pines leaning closer, their shadows pooling like ink. I slowed, the headlights sweeping the pavement, and that's when it happened. The creature leaped, its body stretching mid-air, caught in the beam like a nightmare frozen in time. It was thin, impossibly thin, its ribs jutting under loose, grayish fur that hung like a tattered shroud. Its legs were long, sinewy, bending at angles that mocked bone, and its neck was a foot long, maybe more, swaying low, ending in a blunt stub, no eyes, no mouth, just a ridge of bone glinting white. It moved with a grace that wasn't natural, a single bound carrying it across the road, vanishing into the dark before I could blink. What was that? My brother's voice echoed my thoughts, his hand gripping the door, his face pale. I floored the gas, the truck lurching forward, the tires squealing. "Just a dog," I said, my voice hollow, but I knew it was a lie. Dogs didn't move like that, didn't look like they'd been skinned and stretched over a frame too small. My brother didn't argue, but his silence was loud, his eyes darting to the windows, searching the tree line. The road stretched on, the pines blurring past, but the air inside the truck was wrong, heavy with a scent I hadn't noticed before, something acrid, like burnt hair and wet earth. I rolled up the window, my hands shaking, and checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those limbs loping behind us. Nothing, just darkness, thick and endless, swallowing the road we'd left behind. Now my brother spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Remember when I was a kid?" he said, his eyes on the dashboard. "I used to ride my bike out here, before we moved to the double wide. One night, I got a flat tire, had to walk home. I saw something, eyes, yellow, low to the ground, following me. I ran, didn't look. Back, Mom said it was a coyote, but he trailed off, and I swallowed, my throat dry. I hadn't known that story, hadn't known he'd felt the same dread I did now. This road remembers, I thought, my mother's words echoing, and I wondered how many others had seen what we'd seen, how many had kept driving, praying to forget. The creature's image burned in my mind, its neck swaying, its fur glinting in. The headlights. I tried to rationalize that a sick dog, maybe, or a trick of the light. But the memory of the pine woods, the scream in the holly bush, pressed against me, a truth I couldn't deny. It's the same thing, I thought, my pulse racing, and I wondered if it had followed us from the woods, if it knew where we lived. The double wide was close now, its silhouette rising against the trees, but the safety I'd hoped for felt fragile, a thin veil over something older, hungrier. I pulled into the driveway, the gravel crunching, and cut the engine, the silence rushing in. My brother grabbed his bag, his movements quick, and we hurried inside. Locking the door behind us, my mother was asleep, the TV flickering in the living room, casting blue light across her face. I didn't wake her, didn't tell her what we'd seen. I sat on the couch, my brother beside me, the takeout bag forgotten on the table. The windows were dark, the pines standing sentinel, and I listened, my breath shallow, for any sound beyond the hum of the fridge. Nothing, but the air was heavy, the scent of burnt hair lingering, and I knew the creature was out there. Its stub of a head turned toward our house, its gaze a whisper in the night. It's watching, I thought, and I prayed we'd never see it again. Her laugh sliced through the darkness, a hollow sound that pinned me to the bed. I was trapped in the dream again, my body heavy, my limbs refusing to move. The room was black and white, its edges flickering like an old film reel, the air pulsing with a strobe-like light that made my stomach churn. She was there, the girl, standing at the foot of my bed, her silhouette small but wrong, her head tilted at an angle no child could hold. Her eyes were pits, black and endless, and her mouth was sunken, a void where a smile should have been. She swayed, her movements jerky, like a puppet on frayed strings, and her laugh grew louder, weaving through the walls, the floor, the air. You can't wake up. My chest tightened, and I clawed at the sheets, desperate to escape, but her gaze held me, a cold weight that whispered my name. The dream started when we moved into the double-wide, 5 acres of pine woods wrapping us in their green embrace. I was younger then, still navigating high school, my anxiety a constant hum in my chest. The house was a haven at first, its warm lights and cluttered rooms a shield against the world. But at night, when the pines stood silent and the moon cast silver shadows, the dreams came. They were always the same black and white, the world stripped of color, the light flickering like a dying bulb. The girl was there, her presence a stain on the dream, her laugh a sound I couldn't unhear. I'd wake gasping, my heart racing, the room too small, the air too thick. She's not real, I'd tell myself, but the chill on my skin said otherwise. The first dream was subtle. I was in my bedroom, the familiar posters on the walls, my guitar leaning in the corner. But the light was wrong, pulsing, and the air was heavy, like breathing through cloth. She appeared in the doorway, small and pale, her dress hanging loose, her hair a tangle of shadows. She waltzed toward me, her steps uneven, her arms swaying like branches in a storm. Her laugh was soft, almost playful, but it carried a weight, a promise of something darker. I couldn't move, my body betraying me, and she stopped at my bed, her face hidden in shadow. "Look at me," her silence said, but I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the dream to end. When I woke, the room was normal, the moonlight soft through the window, but her laugh lingered, a whisper in my ears. The dreams grew worse. In one she was older, her face sharper, her eyes blacker. She clung to the corner where the walls met the ceiling, her limbs bent at angles that mocked bone, her fingers digging into the plaster. She stared down, her mouth sunken, her laugh sharper, cutting through the flickering light. I was paralyzed, my breath shallow, my heart a drum in my chest. She crawled closer, her movements slow, deliberate, her nails scraping the wall. "You see me now," her gaze said, and I woke screaming, my mother rushing in, her hands warm but trembling. "Just a nightmare," she said, but her eyes darted to the ceiling, as if she felt it too. The worst was the last dream at the double-wide. She wasn't a girl anymore, not really. Her body stretched, her limbs twisting into shapes that weren't human, her skin tight over bones that shifted beneath. She filled the room, her arms coiling, her legs bending backward, her jaw unhinged to reveal rows of snake-like fangs, long and sharp, glinting in the strobe. Her laugh was a wail, A chorus of voices trapped in one throat, and she lowered her face to mine, her breath cold, her eyes swallowing light. "You're mine," she seemed to say, and I clawed at the air, my voice lost until I woke, the room spinning, the scent of pine and decay thick in my nose. We moved soon after to my grandparents' house to help after my grandfather's heart surgery. The double wide was left behind, its pine woods fading into memory, and the dreams stopped, or so I thought. I started working at the high school, my old school, mopping floors, hauling trash, finding comfort in the routine. But the laugh returned, not in dreams, but in the waking world. I'd hear it in the hallways, faint but unmistakable, bouncing off lockers, seeping through the tiles. It was her, the girl, her voice the same hollow, precise, a sound that turned my blood to ice. I'd freeze, my mop dripping, my flashlight beam trembling, but the corridors were empty, their shadows too deep, too alive. One night, my mother told me the truth. We were in the kitchen at my grandparents' house, the kettle, whistling, the air warm with the scent of chamomile. She was quiet, her hands wrapped around a mug, her eyes distant. "The people who owned the double wide before us," she said, her voice low, "they had a tragedy. The wife died there in her sleep. Her husband left soon after, said he couldn't stay. I didn't tell you then, you were too young, but I always wondered if she was still there." She looked at me, her face pale, and I swallowed, the pieces falling into place. The girl was her. The laugh, the dreams, the weight in the house. It was the woman, her presence woven into the walls. Her grief reaching for me. The dreams came. Twice after we moved, fainter, the girl's face less clear, but her laugh was unchanged, a sound that followed me to the school. I'd hear it in the east wing, near the nurse's office, or in the auditorium, its echo lingering in the rafters. I'd check the rooms, my keys jangling, but find only silence, the air heavy with the scent of chalk and something older, like wilted flowers. "She's here," I'd think, my skin crawling, and I'd hurry to finish my shift, the alarms ticking down to 10 p.m. The staff joked about SC, the school's founder, but I knew it wasn't her. It was the woman, her laugh a bridge between the pine woods in the school, her sorrow a weight I couldn't shake. I told myself to ignore it, to focus on the job, the routine that kept me grounded. But the laugh was relentless, a reminder that some things don't stay buried. I'd stand in the parking lot, the night air cold, the stars dim, and listen, my breath shallow, for her voice. "You can't run from what's inside you," I thought. And I wondered if she'd follow me forever, her laugh a whisper in my dreams, her eyes watching from the dark. The laugh echoed through the auditorium, a hollow chime that stopped my breath. I stood alone on the stage, the mop handle cold in my hands, the high school's vast emptiness swallowing the sound of my footsteps. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and dust, the stage lights dim, casting long shadows that danced across the seats. The laugh wasn't loud, but it was hers, the girl from my dreams, her voice weaving through the rafters, curling around my spine like a cold hand. She's still here. My flashlight beam trembled, slicing through the dark, but the auditorium was empty, its silence a weight I couldn't shake. I'd built a new life, found love, left the pine woods behind, but her whisper followed me, a reminder that some shadows never fade. Life hasn't always been kind, but I've learned to fight its battles. Anxiety was my first enemy, a storm in my chest since I was a toddler, making every step a test of will. My mother saw it early, her stories of doctors and checkups, a quiet proof of her love. I fought it without crutches, no drugs, no liquor, just a stubborn refusal to let it win. A few hard ciders on the darkest days, their crisp bite a fleeting escape, but never enough to blur the edges. You can't hide from yourself. Instead, I filled my mind with Stories Darkness Prevails episodes that hummed through my earbuds, tales of haunted woods and shadow figures that thrilled me, kept the silence at bay. But those stories stopped being safe when they started feeling like my own God. My eating disorder was another war, a voice that turned food into fear. I was a kid when it started, pushing plates away, my stomach twisting under its gaze. My mother fought for me, her hands gentle but firm, guiding me through doctors, through tears. I won that battle too. No pills, just grit, learning to eat without guilt, to see my body as mine again. The scars remain, a quiet fear that I'm never quite whole, but I'm proud of the ground I've gained. Healing is a road, not a finish. Line. Work helped. The custodial job at my old high school, a steady rhythm that grounded me. Mopping floors, hauling trash, scrubbing sinks, it was simple, honest, a way to keep my hands busy, my mind quiet. The school was more than a job. I'd walked its halls as a student, strumming chords with my guitar teacher, fixing desks for the English professor, who still called me kid. When I took the custodial role, they welcomed me like family. $1,600 a month, no questions. Asked, what's not to love? My manager, a guy who'd been here when I was sneaking snacks in class, made it easy. He'd wave off my late starts, my stretched breaks, as long as I hit my 8 hours. I'd take my siblings home at 3:15. There. Laughter a bright spot in my day, and return to finish my shift, the school's familiar hum a comfort. But at night, when the halls emptied and the lights dimmed, the comfort faded, replaced by her laugh, her presence, a shadow I couldn't outrun. I found light in the darkness. A few days ago, I got engaged to the love of my life, a girl. I met in these same halls, her smile a beacon through my storms. She's my anchor, her laughter warm where the girl's is cold, her touch a reminder that I'm not alone. We'd sit on her couch, her head on my shoulder, talking about dreams hers of teaching, mine of a quiet life, maybe a house without shadows. One night, I told her about the laugh, my voice low, my eyes on the floor. I hear it at work. I said, like someone's watching, waiting. She squeezed my hand, her eyes steady. Maybe it's just the school, old and creaky, she said, but her voice wavered, and I knew she felt it too, the weight of something unseen. Love doesn't erase fear, but it makes it bearable. My family's, my rock, my mother's fierce. Love, my father's quiet strength, my siblings' chatter filling the house. We moved to my grandparents' place to help after my grandfather's heart surgery, leaving the double wide and its pine woods behind. I thought the dreams would stay there, the girl's laugh fading with the trees, but she followed me, her voice echoing in the school's halls. I learned the truth from my mother, her words heavy in the kitchen's warm light. The wife of the double-wide's first owner died in her sleep, her husband fleeing the grief, leaving her presence woven into the walls. Was she the girl? I wondered, her laugh a bridge between the pine woods and the school, her sorrow a weight I carried. I keep busy to keep the fear at bay. I watch guitar reviews, dreaming of new chords, or fly fishing videos, imagining rivers, free of shadows. I listen to Darkness Prevails, the stories a strange comfort, a way to face the dark without facing my own. But the laugh finds me, soft but relentless, in the school's quiet corners, the auditorium's vast dark. I've learned to live with it, to lock up at 10 p.m., my flashlight steady, my steps quick. The Job's good, the teachers my friends, their smiles a reminder of why I stay. But every night, I brace for her voice a whisper in the air, her eyes a glint in the shadows. I'm okay, better than I've been. My anxiety's quieter, my eating disorder a memory, my life full of love I don't deserve. I'm grateful for my fiancé, my family, the chance to start anew. But some nights, when the world's too still, I hear it a hollow laugh, faint but clear, like a dream bleeding into the real. She's still there, I think, my heart racing, and I wonder if I'll ever escape her, if the pine wood's shadow will ever lift. I hold my fiancée closer, her warmth grounding me, and pray for dawn, for a day when the whispers finally fade. The mountain air was crisp, laced with pine and the promise of escape. Peter and I had left our 3 daughters squealing on their grandparents' swing set, their laughter fading as we drove toward a weekend of quiet, just the 2 of us. This cabin he'd found was a dream too grand for a couple, its sprawling rooms and hot tub perched against a backdrop of jagged peaks. That first night, we sipped pina coladas under a sky bursting with stars, our hands entwined, the world feeling soft and whole again. I didn't know then that the forest beyond the cabin's glow held something ancient, something that watched with eyes like burning coals. I didn't know that by nightfall, we'd be running for our lives, our love tested by a terror that wore a human face but wasn't human at all. Our girls 5, 7, and 9 had been thrilled to stay with Grandma and Grandpa, their suitcases, stuffed with toys and dreams of backyard adventures. Peter and I hadn't had a weekend alone in years, not since the chaos of parenthood swallowed our time. The drive to the mountains was a balm, the road winding through valleys where mist clung to the earth like a lover's breath. The cabin was more than we needed: polished wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a deck that jutted over a ravine. We laughed at its excess, joking about living like royalty for 2 days. That evening, we sank into the hot tub, the steam curling. Around us, the forest a dark silhouette beyond the lights. I leaned against Peter, his arm warm around my shoulders, and felt the weight of motherhood lift. This is perfect, I thought, unaware that perfection is a fragile thing, easily shattered by what lurks in the shadows. The next morning, we planned a day in the woods. I've always loved the forest, its quiet strength, its secrets whispered in the rustle of leaves. Peter packed our gear with care: water, snacks, a map from the cabin's owners, headlamps for safety. We set out after breakfast, the trail carving, through pines and ferns, the air cool and sharp. The first hours were magic, like stepping into a storybook. We held hands, our footsteps soft on the moss, the world reduced to birdsong and the crunch of needles. We picnicked on a fallen log, sharing sandwiches and trading stories of our early days, before diapers and school runs. We watched a herd of deer glide through the trees, their eyes liquid and calm, and competed to spot birds, robins, jays. A flash of red I swore was a cardinal. Peter teased me when I lost count, his laughter warm, and I felt young again, unburdened. This is what we needed, I thought. The forest a sanctuary, its embrace gentle and safe. But forests change when the sun begins to sink. The light softened, then sharpened, slanting through the trees in blades of gold. We started back, following the trail's familiar curves, the map tucked in Peter's pack. At first, everything was fine, the path clear, the air still warm. But then I felt it, a prickle at the base of my neck, like a cold finger tracing my spine. I glanced around, seeing nothing but trees, yet the feeling grew a certainty that we weren't alone. You're imagining it, I told myself, but my steps quickened, my hand tightening around Peter's. He sensed it too, his jaw tightening, his eyes scanning the underbrush. The forest, so alive hours ago, seemed to hold its breath, the birds falling silent, the breeze dying to a hush. Something's watching, I thought, my heart thudding, but I couldn't name what or why. It started subtly, twigs snapping just beyond the reach of our headlamps, faint enough to dismiss as squirrels or deer. But the sounds followed us, keeping pace too rhythmic for chance. I stopped, my breath shallow, straining to hear. Peter froze beside me, his hand gripping mine. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He nodded, his face pale in the fading light. The snaps grew. Louder, heavier, not the delicate tread of an animal, but something deliberate, something that walked on two legs. My mind raced hiker, hunter, bear, but none fit. The footsteps mirrored ours, pausing when we paused, moving when we moved. It's playing with us, I realized, a chill spreading through my chest. The forest was no longer a sanctuary. It was a trap. We walked faster, the trail stretching endlessly, the cabin's lights a distant promise. The sounds grew bolder, closer, the crunch of leaves now unmistakable. I risked a glance over my shoulder, my headlamp cutting through the gloom, but saw only shadows twisting in the trees. Keep moving, I told myself, but my legs felt heavy, like wading through water. The air thickened, carrying a faint, sour smell decay. Rot, something long dead. My stomach churned, and I gripped Peter's hand tighter, his knuckles white. "We're almost there," he whispered, but his voice shook, betraying his fear. The footsteps were relentless now, pacing us, a hunter toying with its prey. It wants us to know it's there, I thought, my pulse deafening in my ears. Then it happened. A crack split the air, sharp and violent. In a tree, a massive pine. Its trunk wider than my arms could reach crashed across the trail, mere feet. Ahead, we skidded to a stop, dust and needles swirling around us, the ground trembling. That wasn't natural, I thought, my breath hitching. Trees don't fall like that, not without warning, not with such precision. Peter's face was ashen, his eyes wide, and for a moment we stood frozen, staring at the barrier. The footsteps stopped, the silence heavier than ever, pressing against my chest. "Turn around," a voice in my head urged, and we did, slowly, our headlamps sweeping the darkness. There, behind the shattered stump, something crouched. It was human-shaped, but wrong too tightly coiled, its limbs bent at angles that defied bone. Its posture was predatory, like a puma ready to spring, but its size was larger, broader, unnatural. Our lights caught its eyes, two burning red, orbs unblinking, staring through us. My breath caught, my body screaming to run, but I couldn't move, pinned by that gaze. The creature shifted, its head tilting, and a sound emerged, a low, throaty trill, deep and guttural, like a tiger, mixed with something prehistoric. It vibrated in my bones, stirring a primal fear I didn't know I had. This isn't real, I thought, but the smell of decay, the weight of its stare, told me otherwise. Run. The word exploded in my mind, breaking the spell. Peter grabbed my arm, and we scrambled over the fallen tree, its bark tearing at our clothes. The creature moved, its footsteps heavy now, pounding the earth. We ran, our headlamps bobbing, the trail a blur of roots and shadows. The forest seemed to twist around us, the trees leaning closer, their branches clawing at our faces. The creature kept pace, not behind but beside us, a shadow flitting through the trees, its movements too fluid, too fast. I caught glimpses long, matted hair, a flash of pale skin, a smile too wide, too sharp. It's toying with us, I realized, tears streaming down my face, my lungs burning. We stumbled into a clearing, the trail widening, but the creature was there, blocking our path. It stood upright now, taller than any man, its silhouette human, but grotesque. Its eyes burned red, its mouth curling into a wicked, toothy grin, as if savoring our terror. I clung to Peter, his sobs mingling with mine, our hands locked together. This is it, I thought, picturing our girls, their faces fading like smoke. The creature took a step forward, its trill rising to a shriek, and I braced for the end. But then, without a word, Peter and I moved as one, splitting apart, darting around it, our hands finding each other again. We ran the cabin's lights, flickering through the trees, a beacon of hope. The sounds of pursuit followed shrill cries, heavy steps, a rustle like wings, but they faded as we neared the cabin. We burst through the door, collapsing on the floor, our breaths ragged, our bodies trembling. I glanced back, unable to resist, and saw it a silhouette at the tree line, watching, then turning away, swallowed by the dark. Why did it let us go? I wondered, my heart still racing. We packed that night, fleeing before dawn, the mountains looming in the rearview mirror. The drive home was silent, save for our prayers of thanks, our hands clasped tight. Back home, we hugged our girls, their warmth grounding us, but the questions lingered. What was it? Friends suggested Skinwalker, Wendigo, vampire, but no name fit. It was something older, something that didn't need to kill to claim victory. It fed on our fear, our helplessness, our certainty of death. We don't talk about it much, but it haunts us, surfacing in nightmares, where red eyes glow in the dark, where the forest whispers our names. If you venture into the woods at night, trust the silence. It's warning you to run. In the quiet of the woods, loneliness can summon things no one else sees. I was 12, a solitary speck in a world too vast for a child to grasp. Our farm sprawled across acres of earth, its fields golden under the sun, its woods a shadowed haven where I sought refuge. My parents were ghosts in their own lives, consumed by the grind of keeping the farm alive after Grandpa's death. Friends were scarce, my days filled with the hum of my own thoughts. The woods were my sanctuary, a place where the world's weight lifted, where a small creek carved a secret space just for me. I didn't know then that something else called those woods home, something with eyes, like summer skies and a hunger that wasn't just for food. I didn't know I'd name it Odie, or that it would become the friend I never knew I needed. Our farm was a patchwork of life and decay, fields of corn and wheat, a sagging barn and woods that stretched like a dark sea. The creek was my heart's anchor, hidden beneath an arch of ancient oaks, its sandy banks soft under my bare feet. I'd spend hours there, chasing lizards, skipping stones, or just lying back, watching clouds drift through the canopy. The water was clear, deep enough to swim in summer, its current a gentle song that drowned out the silence of my life. Grandpa used to tell stories about the woods, his voice rough but warm, about spirits that walked the land, about things that watched from the shadows. Be careful, kiddo, he'd say, his eyes crinkling. The woods love you, but they don't always share. I'd laugh, thinking he was teasing, but after he was gone, his words lingered, heavy as the air before a storm. That spring afternoon, the sky was a pale blue, streaked with wisps of cloud. School had let out early, and I wandered to the creek, my backpack slung over one shoulder. The woods welcomed me, their shade cool, the air rich with pine and damp earth. I settled on the bank, my fingers trailing in the water, searching for lizards among the rocks. The world felt right, whole, until it didn't. A rustle broke the quiet, sharp and sudden, from the thick brush to my right. My head snapped up, my heart stuttering. The bushes trembled, leaves shaking as if something big was forcing its way through. A bear? I thought, my breath shallow. Bears weren't common here, but the idea rooted me to the spot, my eyes fixed on the green wall. The rustling stopped, and a sound pierced the air, a bleat, like a sheep, but wrong, garbled, as if the throat. Making it wasn't built for such a noise. My skin prickled, a wave of dread washing over me. We had no sheep, no goats, just cows and horses, and our neighbors' ranches were the same. I crouched behind an oak, its bark rough against my palms, my heart pounding. Run, my mind screamed, but curiosity held me fast. A child's need to. See outweighing fear. Minutes passed, the silence heavy, and then it stepped out a creature that wasn't animal. Wasn't human, but something in between. It was tall, lanky, its frame skeletal under a coat of filthy white fur. Its arms were too long, ending in bony hands that dangled like broken tools. Its eyes were blue, impossibly human, set in a face that was all wrong, hollow, stretched, with a mouth that gaped too wide. It moved with a limp, each step jerky, unnatural, as it shuffled toward the creek. Another bleat tore from its throat, distorted, like it was drowning in its own voice. I stared, frozen, my breath caught as it paused, sniffing the air. It knows. I'm here, I thought, my body trembling. A twig snapped under my foot, and its head whipped toward me, those blue eyes locking onto mine. Run now. The command exploded in my mind, and I bolted, tearing through the woods, branches clawing at my arms. The creature's scream, a mix of human wail and animal cry, chased me, its footsteps pounding behind. I didn't look back, my lungs burning, my feet stumbling over roots. The farm's open fields appeared, a beacon of safety, and I collapsed. In the grass, gasping, my eyes darting to the tree line. Nothing followed, but the woods were silent, watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. The creature's eyes burned into my memory, its scream echoing in my ears. I scoured books, the internet, anything to name what I'd seen. Skinwalker, the word whispered, a Navajo legend, a shapeshifter, a thing of nightmares. It didn't leave. Over weeks, it returned, always at dusk, always watching. I'd catch glimpses from my window, a horse with two long legs, a dog with human eyes, once my mother's face, smiling from the trees, her voice calling my name in a rasp that wasn't hers. Fear kept me from the woods, but curiosity gnawed, a child's need to understand. I started leaving food scraps of bread, a half-eaten apple on the porch, watching from my room. The food vanished, replaced by gifts, a smooth stone, a bird's bone, a tangle of fur. It's trying to talk, I thought, my fear softening, replaced by a strange pity. This thing, whatever it was, seemed as lost as I was. One day, I returned to the creek, my heart racing, a barbecue sandwich in my pack. I sat on the bank, eating, when the air shifted, the hairs on my neck rising. Across the creek, hidden in the brush, those blue eyes watched, unblinking. The creature was thinner now, its ribs stark, its arms trembling. It's starving, I realized, a pang of empathy cutting through my fear. I tossed the sandwich across the water, watching it land in the bushes. The creature hesitated, then lunged, disappearing with the food. I left, my heart lighter, the woods feeling less hostile. The next day, I found my lunchbox torn apart, hoof-like prints in the sand. Instead of anger, I felt relief. I hoped it. Weeks passed, and a storm hit, tearing through the farm. Trees fell, the creek swelled, and the woods became a maze of debris. I wandered the trails, checking for damage, my thoughts on the creature. What if it's hurt? The thought was irrational, but it gripped me, a child's heart tying itself to the impossible. A cry broke the silence, a woman's scream, mixed with a pig's squeal, raw and desperate. I followed it, my boots sinking in mud, until I found it, pinned under a massive branch, its limbs twisted, blood matting its fur. My heart ached, a strange urge to help overwhelming my fear. I crept closer, keeping low, the creature's blue eyes tracking me, wild but not hostile. The branch was heavy, pinning one leg, but it was clawing at the earth, nearly free. I braced myself, heaving the branch just enough for it to slide out. It lunged forward, then stopped, turning to face. Me. Its form shifted a white dog, too skinny, too tall, its movements jerky, unnatural. We stared, the air thick, until I pulled a small steak from my bag, tossing it gently. It devoured it, its eyes never leaving mine, then took a step closer. I froze, the smell of rot and damp fur filling my nose, but I didn't run. It stopped, inches away, towering over me, then turned and limped into the shadows. After that, Odie, my name for it, was a constant. I'd see it across the creek when I sat by the fire, its eyes glinting as I talked about school, my parents, my loneliness. It watched from the woods when I tended the horses, a silent guardian. At night, I'd catch its silhouette in a pasture, those blue eyes a strange comfort. I left food leftovers, bread, anything, and it left gifts, bones, rocks, once a tiny skull, delicate as lace. I told it about Grandpa, how I missed his stories, and it listened, its form shifting to his once, saying I love you. Boo in a raspy echo of his voice. My friends laughed when I hinted at it, calling me a cryptid tamer, but my cousin saw it once, her face pale. Refusing to return to the woods. We moved twice, to places with woods nearby, and Odie followed. I'd see it through. My window, its fur slick in the rain, or hear soft taps on the glass, a reminder it was there. You're still here, I'd whisper, my heart easing. It never hurt me, never threatened, only watched, studied, comforted in its strange way. I don't know why it chose me, why it stayed. Maybe it saw my loneliness, my need for something to call mine. Not all monsters are cruel. I think now, Odie's blue eyes a beacon in my memory. If you ever find yourself alone in the woods, don't fear the shadows. Sometimes they're lonely too. Love can blind you to the darkness waiting in someone's smile. I was 16, caught in the fever of youth, where every glance and whisper felt like a promise. Valentine's Day 2019 was supposed to be my triumph, a first date, a chance to silence the jeers of my friends who flaunted their girlfriends like trophies. Sandra was my choice, her quiet charm a flicker of hope in our small town's gray routine. I didn't know then that her smile hid a shadow, that her invitation would lead me to a bridge where love turned to betrayal. I didn't know I'd face a blade in the dark, or that the word hun would haunt my dreams, a name for something I couldn't see but felt in my bones. Our town was a sleepy sprawl, where everyone knew your secrets before you did. My friends, loud, brash, always pushing, had been relentless, their taunts about my single status cutting deeper each day. Get a girl, man, they'd say, smirking over their sodas at the diner. Sandra was different, or so I thought. She sat, alone in class, her dark hair falling over her eyes, her voice soft but sharp when she spoke. We talked a few times, her laugh warm, her gaze lingering just long enough to make my pulse race. When I asked her out the night before Valentine's, my voice shaking, she said yes, and I felt invincible, clutching the box of chocolates my mom insisted I bring. That evening, I walked to her house, the February air biting my cheeks, the sky a bruise of purple and gray. The street was quiet, the houses squat and weathered, but Sandra's stood out a sagging relic, its paint peeling like old skin, its windows dark except for a faint flicker inside. I'd seen it before, my friends and I laughing as we passed, calling it haunted, never imagining I'd step inside. My stomach twisted as I approached, the chocolates heavy in my hands. Just nerves, I told myself, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like stepping into a room where an argument had just ended. Sandra opened the door, her smile bright but fleeting, her eyes darting past me to the street. You made it, she said, her voice tight, and I followed her inside, my heart thudding. The house was better inside, but only just. The furniture was warm, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and something sour, like damp wood. Her parents barely looked up from the couch, their faces lit by the glow of a muted TV. We're watching a movie upstairs. They mumbled, waving us off, their indifference chilling. Sandra led me to the living room, her movements quick, almost restless. We sat on a lumpy couch, treating awkward small talk school music to weather my hands sweaty around the chocolate box. I handed it to her, my cheeks burning, and she took it with a nod, setting it aside unopened. She's just shy, I thought, but her eyes kept flicking to the stairs, her fingers twisting in her lap. Then she stood, her voice suddenly bright. Want to show you something. I followed her upstairs, the steps groaning under our weight, the hallway dim and cluttered with boxes. Her room was small, the walls bare except for a cracked mirror and a poster curling at the edges. She knelt by her bed, pulling out a wooden board, letters, numbers, a planchette, a Ouija board. Let's play, she said, her eyes gleaming, but my stomach dropped. My family was religious, the kind who prayed before meals and warned the spirits. Lurking in such games. I don't mess with that stuff, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Her smile faltered, a flash of anger crossing her face. It's just a game, she pressed, but I shook my head, my unease growing. She stared at me, then shrugged, her voice cold. Fine. We went back downstairs, the air between us tense. Sandra suggested a walk, her mood shifting to forced cheer. I know. A great route, she said, grabbing a sweatshirt. Wait outside, I'll get something. I stepped onto the porch, the night swallowing the street, the stars hidden by clouds. This is weird, I thought, but I stayed, not wanting to seem scared. She returned, her hands in her pockets, and we started walking, her pace brisk. The neighborhood gave way to trees, the path narrowing as we entered the woods. Just a short walk, I told myself, but the forest thickened, the trail twisting deeper, the air colder. The sun had set, the darkness pressing in, my breath visible in the chill. We should head back, I said, my voice unsteady, but Sandra shook her head. It's just a bit further. Her tone was sharp, her eyes fixed ahead. The trail opened to a clearing, a wooden bridge stretching over a rocky ditch 30 feet below. The railing was low, splintered, and I hesitated, leaning cautiously to peer into the abyss. Sandra stopped beside me, her hand brushing my back, soft at first, like a girlfriend's touch. I relaxed, my guard down, until her palm pressed harder, then shoved with a force that stole my breath. She's pushing me. I caught the railing, my body lurching forward, my feet scrambling for balance. I could have died, I gasped, spinning to face her, my heart racing. What the hell, Sandra? I yelled, but her face was blank, her eyes hollow. She stepped back, her hand slipping into her waistband, pulling out a kitchen knife, its blade glinting in the moonlight. He needs blood, she whispered, her voice low, almost not her own. You disrespected him. I froze, my mind reeling. Who's he? I stammered, backing away, the bridge creaking under me. He's been with me since we moved here, she said, her words tumbling out, feverish. We talked through the board. He wanted you. She lunged, the knife flashing, and I blocked her arm, my wrist burning where the blade grazed. Stop! I shouted, but she pressed forward, her strength unnatural, her eyes wild. I grabbed her wrist, twisting until the knife clattered to the bridge. She slashed at me with her free hand, her nails raking my side, a sharp sting spreading warmth across my shirt. I shoved her, harder than I meant, and she stumbled, falling to her knees. Run. The word was a command, my legs moving before my mind caught up. I tore through the woods, branches snapping at my face, the darkness a maze of shadows. Her voice echoed behind me, a scream of rage, but it faded, swallowed by the trees. I didn't stop until I reached the street, the town's lights a lifeline. I staggered home, collapsing in the doorway, my side bleeding, my breath ragged. My parents were horrified, their voices a blur as they called 911. I told them everything, the board, the bridge, the knife. Hun, the police found the blade, its edge stained with my blood, and Sandra's family left town after we pressed charges. The case was open and shut, the evidence damning, but the questions lingered. Who was he? I saw Sandra's face in my dreams, her eyes hollow, her voice whispering he's still here. I avoided the woods, the bridge, anything that felt too quiet, too dark. Valentine's Day lost its shine, a reminder that love can be a mask for something crueler. Choose carefully who you trust. Some smiles hide blades. Some places hold memories so heavy they bleed into the earth, waiting for the unwary to stumble upon them. I was 10, a small shadow in a world too big to understand, my sneakers crunching through the leaves of a forest that whispered secrets older than my grandparents. Our town was a quiet place where history lingered like dust in the air, and the woods near my house were my playground, a maze of trees and trails where I could be anyone, a knight, an explorer, a hero. That autumn evening, I set out with my dog, my flashlight bobbing in the dusk, drawn to a path I'd heard was once a Confederate field hospital. I didn't know then that the ground beneath my feet held more than roots, that the silence of the woods was a warning. I didn't know I'd find eyes staring up from the dirt, or that their gaze would follow me home. Carved into my dreams, my dog was new, a scruffy mutt with floppy ears and a tail that never stopped wagging. I'd had her 2 months, and she was my shadow, trotting beside me through the fields, her nose always sniffing the air. She was quiet, the kind of dog that watched more than she barked, her brown eyes sharp and knowing. That day, the air was cool, the sky a fading orange, the trees casting long shadows that danced across the path. The woods were familiar, there, trails worn by my endless adventures, but this one was different, a narrow road, overgrown with weeds, leading to a place the older kids whispered about. The hospital road, they called it, where soldiers bled out under canvas tents, their screams swallowed by the trees. I didn't believe in ghosts, not really, but the stories made my skin prickle, a thrill that pulled me deeper. The path was rough, roots twisting through the dirt, the air thick with the smell of damp leaves and something sharper, like rusted iron. My dog stayed close, her ears perked, her steps cautious. I swung my flashlight, its beam cutting through the gathering dark, my heart light with the joy of exploration. Just a quick look, I told myself, imagining I'd find an old button or a rusted can, something to brag about at school. The trees leaned closer, their branches tangling overhead, the light dimming as the sun sank. I hummed to fill the quiet, my voice small against the wood's vastness. But my dog's sudden freeze stopped me cold. She stood rigid, her hackles raised, her eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "What's wrong, girl?" I whispered, kneeling beside her, my hand on her trembling back. Then it came a bark, sharp and raw, the first I'd ever heard from her. It echoed through the trees, a warning that sent a chill down my spine. She sees. Something, I thought, my flashlight sweeping the path, finding nothing but shadows. The air felt heavier now, like a weight pressing against my chest. The woods too silent, too still. I stood, my heart thudding, and took a step forward, my curiosity battling the urge to turn back. Just a deer, I told myself, but the lie felt thin, the silence too deep. Then I heard it soft at first, a crunch of leaves behind me, like footsteps. Keeping pace, I spun, my flashlight jerking, its beam dancing across the trees, but nothing was there. Just the wind, I thought, but the air was still, the leaves unmoving. My dog barked again, louder, her body low, her teeth bared. Something's following us, I realized, my breath shallow, my eyes straining into the dark. The footsteps came again, closer, deliberate, not the scatter of an animal, but the steady tread of something that knew I was here. I backed away, my flashlight shaking, my voice stuck in my throat. Run, a voice in my head urged, but my legs felt rooted, my body caught in a dream where fear slowed time. I forced myself to move, my sneakers slipping on the dirt, my dog pressing against my legs. The path wound deeper, the hospital site just ahead, a clearing where the air felt colder, thicker. I stopped, my breath ragged, the footsteps pausing with me. It's watching, I thought, my skin crawling, my flashlight sweeping the underbrush. Something caught the light, a flash of gray, tangled in the roots, like cloth buried in the earth. I stepped closer, my heart pounding, my dog growling low. It was fabric old and frayed, wrapped around something hard, half hidden in the dirt. A relic, I thought, my fear mixing with excitement. But as I leaned in, the ground seemed to shift, the air sour with decay. I froze, my flashlight locked on the cloth, my mind racing. Don't touch it, a voice warned, but I couldn't look away. The footsteps started again, closer now, circling, a rustle of leaves that felt alive. My dog lunged forward, her barks frantic, and I stumbled back, my beam catching something else, two hollow sockets, staring up from the dirt. A skull, human, its jaw gaping, its eyes empty, but somehow watching, locked on me. My breath stopped, my body cold, the world tilting, as if the ground might swallow me. It sees me, I thought, the skull's gaze await, pulling me into its silence. The footsteps were everywhere now, a chorus of unseen watchers, the woods alive with something. I couldn't run now. The command broke through, and I bolted, my dog at my heels, the skull's stare burning into my back. The path blurred, branches clawing at my arms, the air thick like water. The footsteps chased, heavy and fast, a presence that felt older than the trees, angrier than the wind. I didn't look back, my lungs burning, my flashlight swinging wild, its beam a lifeline in the dark. The woods seemed to twist, the path stretching endlessly, the hospital road a trap I'd walked into blind. My dog's barks were my anchor, guiding me toward the main road, its lights a distant promise. I burst from the trees, collapsing in, the grass, my body trembling, my eyes darting to the forest's edge. Nothing followed, but the silence was a threat, the woods watching, waiting. I didn't tell my parents, didn't dare speak of the skull or the steps. They'd call it imagination, a kid spooked by shadows, but I knew better. That night, I lay awake, the skull's hollow gaze replaying in my mind, the footsteps echoing in my ears. I dreamed of the hospital road, of soldiers bleeding into the earth, their eyes empty, their hands reaching from the dirt. You saw us, they whispered, their voices a chorus, pulling me back to the woods. I woke sweating, my heart racing, the darkness outside my window, too deep, too alive. Years later, I've never returned. The woods are still there, their trails unchanged, but I avoid them. Their silence a warning I can't ignore. The skull stays with me, its gaze a shadow in my memory, a reminder of what lies buried. If you find yourself on a path where the air grows heavy, where the earth hides bones, don't linger. Run and don't look back. The forest knows when you're alone, and it speaks in ways that unravel your mind. I was Franny Barber, a wanderer of trails, my boots worn from the Appalachian and Pacific crest, my heart tethered to the wild. Jennings State Forest in northern Florida was my backyard, its pioneer trail a familiar friend. 12 miles of pine and oak, where I could lose myself and find peace. That morning, I laced up my boots, craving the quiet of a day off, the air crisp with autumn's edge. The woods welcomed me, their chorus of birds and frogs a lullaby, their paths a map I knew by heart. I didn't know then that the forest could turn traitor, that a sound soft, rhythmic, relentless would shatter my reality. I didn't know I'd see a thing that wasn't meant to exist, its faces shifting like a nightmare's reel, leaving me to question what was real. I'd always been a solitary hiker, thriving in the silence others feared. The Appalachian Trail had tested my endurance, the Pacific Crest my resolve, each step a defiance of doubt. I prided myself on logic, on grounding my fears in reason bears, snakes, storms, all manageable with preparation. Jennings was gentler, its trails forgiving, its dangers mundane. That day, I set out early, my pack light, my firearm holstered. At my side, a habit from wilder paths. The forest was alive, the air rich with pine and damp earth, the sunlight filtering through the canopy in golden slants. I nodded to a lone hiker, our eyes meeting briefly, then continued, my boots steady. On the packed dirt, my mind drifting to the rhythm of my steps. The first hour was bliss. I followed the trail's curves, pausing to watch a squirrel dart up an oak, its chatter sharp against the hum of frogs. The river came into view, its waters glinting, and I sat on a mossy rock, letting the current's murmur wash over me. This is why I come here, I thought, my shoulders loosening, the world's noise fading. I ate a granola bar, the wrapper crinkling in the quiet, and traced the river's path with my eyes, its banks lush with ferns. The forest felt like a friend, its secrets benign, its presence a comfort. I stood, adjusting my pack, and climbed. The small foothill beyond, the trail rising gently, the trees thickening around me dot. Then it began. A sound, soft at first, like a tongue tapping the roof of a mouth, rhythmic and deliberate. I stopped, my head tilting, my ears straining to place it. A bird? I thought, but the forest had gone silent. The bird song and rustling leaves vanished, leaving only that strange cadence. It was all around me, not from one direction but everywhere. A chorus that pulsed in the air. My skin prickled, a chill creeping up my spine despite the warm sun. Keep walking, I told myself, my boots moving again, but the sound grew louder, closer, its rhythm unsteady now, like voices overlapping in a crowded room. I scanned the trees, their shadows deeper, their trunks taller than I remembered, as if the forest had stretched itself in my paws. The silence was wrong, a void that pressed against my chest, heavy with intent. I'd been in quiet woods before, but this was different, alive, watching, waiting. My hand brushed my firearm, its weight grounding me, but my pulse quickened, my eyes darting to every flicker of movement. Nothing's there, I thought, but the lie felt hollow. The air thicker now, carrying a faint, rancid smell decay, not earth, but something left to rot in the heat. My stomach twisted, my breath shallow, as I backed away, the trail suddenly unfamiliar, its curves sloping in ways they shouldn't. The trees loomed, their branches knotted like veins, their bark etched with patterns that made my head swim. The sound stopped, abrupt and jarring, leaving a silence that screamed louder than before. I exhaled, my shoulders trembling, and took a step forward, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Just keep going, I whispered, but the ground gave beneath my boot, soft and wet, like stepping into a wound. The smell hit harder, thick and suffocating, clogging my throat. I gagged, covering my nose, my eyes watering as the forest seemed to shimmer, the trees bending inward, their trunks impossibly tall, their shapes wrong. This isn't real, I thought, my heart pounding, but the air was alive, heavy with a presence I couldn't see, Dot. Then it came again, louder, chaotic, a cacophony of rhythms, some slow and deliberate, others rapid, frantic, as if dozens of mouths were trying to mimic a single sound. My vision blurred, a wave of disorientation slamming me forward, my knees buckling. The world twisted, the trail a mirage, the trees writhing like living things. I reached for my gun, my left hand fumbling, my right arm numb, useless, as if my body had forgotten itself. Something's wrong with me, I realized, a primal fear clawing at my gut. You're not supposed to be here. The thought wasn't mine, but it filled my mind, cold and commanding. A voice that wasn't a voice. Movement flickered at my periphery. A shadow detaching from the trees, too tall, too fluid. It wasn't walking but gliding, its limbs bending at angles that broke reason, its joints too many, too sharp. My flashlight caught it, and I wished it hadn't. It was massive, its frame skeletal, its skin leathery, dark as oil. Its face or lack of one was a nightmare, features shifting, flickering like an old film reel. A woman's mouth gaped. A man's eyes stared. A child's grin flashed. Then nothing. A void where a face should be. Each shift pulsed with the rhythm of the clicks, the sound drilling into my skull, a tide threatening to drown me. Run, my mind screamed, but my body refused. My limbs heavy, my breath shallow, my thoughts sluggish. It turned its head, the motion, jerky, unnatural, and I felt its gaze, not eyes, but a weight, pinning me to the earth. Run now. The command broke through, and I bolted, tearing through the underbrush, branches snapping at my face. The air was thick, syrupy, slowing my steps. The forest alive with movement, trees groaning, shadows leaping, the sound following, relentless, closer. I tripped, my hands sinking into the soft earth, the smell of rot choking me. Get up, I gasped, scrambling to my feet, my flashlight swinging wild, its beam catching glimpses of the thing too tall, too fast, gliding just beyond my sight. A whisper came, not in my ears, but inside my head. Stop running. It was a command, a vice clamping my mind, my legs slowing against my will. My vision darkened, my breath hitched, and something cold, wet pressed against my neck. No, I thought, shaking it off, and the world snapped back, the sound gone, Lee. Air light, the trees normal. I stumbled onto the trail, my body trembling, my eyes darting behind me. Nothing was there, just the empty forest, untouched, serene. But the dread remained, a gnawing certainty that something had been there, something that knew my name. I didn't stop until I reached my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the keys. I drove away, the forest shrinking in my rear view, but the feeling followed a faint rhythm, just beneath the wind, patient, waiting. That night, I lay awake, the thing's shifting faces replaying in my mind, its voice a shadow in my thoughts. I dreamed of the trail, of trees that bled, of a faceless thing whispering my name. You saw me, it said, its features dissolving into mine. I woke gasping, the darkness outside my window too deep, too alive. I've never gone back to Jennings. Alone, the trails I loved feel tainted, their silence a threat I can't ignore. The sound haunts me, faint but persistent, a reminder of what I saw, what I felt. If you hear the forest go quiet, if the air turns heavy, don't wait for the sound. Run, and don't look back. Some nights, the desert whispers your name, daring you to look into its shadows. I was James, a city kid chasing escape in the vastness of the Navajo desert, my heart light with the promise of a weekend unplugged. We were a small crew, me, Jake, and a handful of friends. Our tents pitched under a sky so clear, it felt like we could touch the stars. The fire crackled, its warmth a shield against the dry chill, our laughter mingling with the hum of the night. We'd heard the stories, the ones whispered by locals about skinwalkers, shapeshifters that haunted the land, but they were just folklore, campfire tales to spook tourists. I didn't know then that the desert held truths no story could capture, that a thing with no face would stare into my soul. I didn't know I'd carry its laugh, twisted and cold. In my dreams for years, the desert was a world apart, its red earth stretching to the horizon, dotted with scrub and stone. We'd driven. Hours from the city, the radio fading to static, the road narrowing until it was just us and the wild. Our campsite was a clearing near the edge of Navajo land, a place where the air felt heavy with history, though we didn't dwell on it. We were young, reckless, chasing freedom in the open space, our tents a fragile claim against the vastness. That first night, we sat around the fire, passing beers and stories, the stars a glittering canopy above. Jake, always the bold one, mocked the Skinwalker tailies, his voice loud, his grin wide. Just coyotes and old men's lies, he said, and we laughed, the desert swallowing our voices. I'd heard the stories before, half listened in diners or gas stations, where locals spoke of creatures that wore animal skins, that mimicked voices to lure you away. Don't whistle at night, they'd say, their eyes serious, and never look too long into the dark. I'd nodded, skeptical, my city upbringing a shield against superstition. But out here, with the city's glow gone, the desert felt alive, its silence deeper than any forest, its shadows sharper. I shook it off, focusing on the fire, its flames dancing, the warmth grounding me. We talked late, our voices softening as the night grew colder, the stars brighter, until we crawled into our tents, the desert's hum lulling us to sleep. Not the next night. Everything changed. The air was still, unnaturally so, the kind of stillness that presses against your skin, demanding attention. We sat by the fire, but the mood was quieter, our jokes falling flat, our eyes darting to the darkness beyond the light. The crickets, so loud the night before, were gone, the wind absent, the desert holding its breath. Something's off, I thought, my fingers tightening around my beer, my gaze flicking to the scrub. Jake noticed it too, his grin gone, his shoulders tense. What's with the quiet? He muttered, but no one answered. The silence a weight we couldn't shake. Then it came a sound, low and distant, a growl that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. It rolled across the desert, deep and distorted, like a voice trying to speak through a broken throat. My heart stuttered, my eyes locking on the fire, as if its light could keep the sound at bay. Coyote, I told myself, but the lie felt thin. The growl too deliberate, too wrong. It came again, closer, its pitch shifting, almost mocking, as if it knew we were listening. What the hell is that? One friend whispered, her voice trembling. Jake stood, his flashlight in hand, his jaw set. I'm gonna check it out, he said, his tone defiant, but his eyes uneasy. Don't, I said, my voice sharper than I meant, but he shrugged, his bravado a mask. 5 minutes, he promised, and strode into the dark, his flashlight beam slicing through the night. We waited, the fire's warmth fading, the silence heavier, the growl gone, but its echo lingering in my mind. Minutes stretched, each one a knot in my chest, my eyes fixed on the spot where Jake had vanished. He's fine, I told myself, but my hands shook, my breath shallow. Then we heard him, his voice, raw and panicked, cutting through the night. James, you need to come now. We scrambled to our feet, grabbing flashlights, our fear a shared pulse. We ran toward his voice, the desert a maze of shadows, the ground uneven under our boots. Jake stood frozen, his flashlight trembling, his face pale as bone. I don't know what it was, he stammered, pointing into the dark. Not a person, not an animal, something else. My beam followed his, sweeping the scrub, finding nothing at first, just dust and thorns. Then I saw it a figure, standing among the shadows, too tall, too thin. Its limbs stretched like a spider's. Brushing the ground dot, it wasn't human, though it wore a human's shape. Its arms were wrong, unnaturally long, its fingers dangling, like dead branches. Its face, if you could call it that, was a horror, pale and translucent, stretched tight over bone, with no eyes, no nose, just a wide gaping mouth that seemed to pulse. It stood still, watching us, its silence louder than any sound, its presence a violation of the world I knew. My breath caught, my body screaming to run, but I couldn't move, pinned by its hollow gaze. It knows we see it, I thought, my skin. Crawling, the air thick with a sour, metallic scent. Like blood left to dry dot, the thing shifted, its movements jerky, unnatural, as if learning how to move in its stolen form. Then it laughed, a sound that wasn't laughter, a twisted, mocking cackle that froze my blood. It wasn't animal, wasn't human, but something older, crueler, a sound that knew our fear and savored it. Run, my mind screamed, and Jake broke. First, shouting something lost to the night. We bolted, our flashlights swinging, the desert a blur of rock and shadow. The thing didn't chase, not right away, but I felt it. A presence at the edge of my vision, moving just beyond my light. Its laugh echoing in my skull. We didn't stop until we reached the car, our breaths ragged, our hands fumbling for keys. I glanced back, my flashlight catching nothing but empty desert. But the feeling stayed a certainty that it was there, watching, waiting. We drove away, the city's lights a lifeline, but the desert's weight followed, its silence a threat. That night, I lay awake, the thing's face burned into my mind, its laugh a loop I couldn't escape. I dreamed of the desert, of a figure standing at my tent, its mouth stretching wider, whispering my name. You saw me, it said, its voice a blade, and I woke gasping, the darkness too deep, too alive. Years later, the memory clings, sharp and unrelenting. I avoid deserts now, their silence too familiar, their shadows too deep. Owls, coyotes, any night. Sound sends my heart racing, a reminder of that laugh, that face. The old stories aren't just stories. I know now. Their truth carved into my fear. If you camp where the land feels heavy, where the night goes quiet, don't look into the dark. Run and don't turn back. In the heart of childhood adventures, the night can show you truths too wild to believe. I was Lycan, 10 years old, my world a canvas of imagination where every tree was a castle, every trail a quest. That summer, Shay, Dan, and I begged our parents for a camping trip, our voices a chorus of pleas until they relented. The woods of New Jersey stretched before us, vast and untamed, a kingdom for 3 kids with cheap flashlights and dreams of glory. We pitched our tents under the watchful eyes of our parents, the firelight painting our faces with courage. I didn't know then that the forest held secrets sharper than our laughter, that a thing with golden eyes would shatter our innocence. I didn't know those eyes would follow me, glowing in the dark of my dreams, a reminder that some truths are too big for a child's heart. Our town was small, the kind where everyone knew your bike, your dog, your secrets. Shay, Dan, and I were inseparable. Our days spent racing through fields, building forts, chasing stories we half believed. The camping trip was our triumph, a chance to prove we were bigger than our years. The drive to the woods was a blur of excitement, the old highway fading behind us, the forest rising like a green sea. Our campsite was a clearing, the ground soft with pine needles, the air rich with earth and resin. Our parents set up the tents, their voices a steady hum, while we buzzed with plans exploring ghost stories, maybe even spotting a bear. Nothing's gonna scare us. Dan boasted, his grin wide, and we nodded. Our flashlights clutched like swords. The first day was magic. We roasted marshmallows, the fire crackling, the stars a glittering net above. Our parents told stories of their own childhoods, their laughter warm, but we were already plotting our adventure. Let's explore tomorrow, Shay whispered, her eyes bright, and Dan and I agreed, our hearts racing with the thrill of the unknown. The woods were huge, their trails, twisting into shadows, their depths a challenge we couldn't resist. We slept fitfully, the forests hum a lullaby, our dreams filled with heroes and monsters we thought we could outrun. Morning brought a new energy. We scarfed down breakfast, our parents' warnings stay close, don't wander too far barely. Registering, we'll be fine, I promised, my flashlight tucked in my pocket, its beam weak but ours. The trail was wide at first, the trees tall and welcoming, the air cool under the canopy. We laughed, chasing each other, spotting a raccoon family scuttling through the underbrush. Look at the babies. Shay squealed, and we watched, our voices soft, the forest alive with bird calls and rustling leaves. The day stretched, our steps. Confident, the trail leading us deeper, the campsite a distant memory. But forests change as the sun dips low. The light softened, then sharpened, the shadows lengthening, the air growing heavy. We should head back, I said, my voice uncertain. But Dan shook his head. Just a bit further, he urged, his eyes fixed on the path. The trail narrowed, the trees. Closer, their branches tangling overhead, the light fading to a gray haze. Our flashlights flickered, their beams dim, the batteries cheap and failing. This doesn't look right, Shay whispered, her voice small, and I felt it too, a knot in my stomach. A sense that we'd crossed a line we couldn't see. The forest went quiet, the birdsong gone, the leaves still. Where's the trail? I asked, my flashlight sweeping the ground, finding only roots and dirt. We were lost, the realization sinking in like cold water. We'll find it, Dan said, but his voice shook, his bravado crumbling. We walked, our steps hurried, the darkness pressing in, the air thick with pine and something sour like damp fur. My heart thudded, my eyes darting to every shadow. The forest no longer a playground, but a maze, its paths a trap. We're okay, I told myself, but the lie felt fragile. The quiet too deep, too deliberate. We stumbled into a clearing, a patch of open ground ringed by trees, the moonlight casting a pale glow. Let's rest, Shay said, her voice trembling, and we sat on jagged rocks, our flashlights pooling weak light. The silence was a weight, pressing against my chest, my breath shallow. Something's out there, I thought, my eyes scanning the trees, seeing nothing, but feeling everything a presence, watchful, waiting. Then we saw it, 10 feet away, standing at the clearing's edge, a figure, tall and furry, its form black against the moonlight dot. At first, I thought it was a bear, rearing on its hind legs, but its shape was wrong, too lean, too deliberate. Its head was canine, sharp and angular, its eyes two burning golden orbs, unblinking, locked on us. Its fur was matted, dark as ink, its limbs long and sinewy, standing upright like a man, but moving with a predator's grace. That's no bear, I thought, my breath catching, my body frozen. Shay gasped, her hand gripping my arm, Dan's flashlight shaking in his hand. The thing didn't move, its gaze await, its silence louder than any roar. It sees us, I realized, my heart slamming, the air sour with its scent, like wet dog and old blood. Run, the word exploded in my mind, and we bolted, our screams tearing through the night. The clearing blurred, the trees a maze of claws, our flashlights swinging wild. The thing didn't chase, or did it? I felt it, a presence at our backs, its eyes burning into us, its silence a threat. My legs burned, my lungs ached, the forest twisting around us, the trail lost in our panic. Shay stumbled, and I grabbed her hand, pulling her forward, dance. Shouts a beacon in the dark. Keep going, I gasped, my flashlight flickering, the campsite's firelight a distant hope. We burst into the clearing, our parents' voices rising, their arms pulling us close. Where were you? They demanded. There. Faces pale, but we couldn't speak, our breaths ragged, our eyes darting to the trees. We saw a bear. Dan lied, his voice shaking, and we nodded, the truth too wild, too raw. They scolded us, their relief a shield, but we didn't care, our fear a secret we'd carry alone. That night, I lay in my tent, the forests hum a threat, the thing's golden eyes glowing in my mind. I dreamed of the clearing, of a creature standing over me, its jaws wide, its voice a growl. You saw me. I woke trembling, the darkness outside too deep, too alive. Years later, I've kept the secret, the memory sharp and unrelenting. I avoid woods now, their shadows too familiar, their silence too heavy. The eyes haunt me, golden and unyielding. A reminder that the world holds truths we can't explain. Some things in the wild aren't meant to be seen. I know now, their gaze a weight I'll never shed. If you wonder where the trees grow thick, where the night goes quiet, don't linger. Run and don't look back.